We spend so much of our lives planning everything, right? Our careers, our families, our finances. But how much time do we really spend thinking about our later years? And I don't just mean saving money. I mean, how do we actually want to live? Well, today we're going to dive into a really powerful and honestly pretty provocative philosophy on aging from the sociologist Chizuko Ueno, and it might just challenge everything you thought you knew. And she kicks things off with this bombshell of a statement. I know it sounds a little harsh, right? But it's the absolute foundation of her entire argument. The reality is, our kids grow up and leave, partners might pass away, and at the end of the day, we all face that final chapter of our lives on our own terms. So the real question is, are we ready for that? So first, let's talk about what she calls the myth of a happy old age. You know the picture we're always sold, this cozy retirement surrounded by loving kids and grandkids? But is that really the whole story, or even the happiest one? And this is the critical question Ueno really wants us to wrestle with. For generations, this was just the goal. It was the assumed path. But is it still the best way to find fulfillment in our later years? Let's dig into why she thinks it just might be a myth. I love this analogy she uses. She calls it the Cinderella role. Think about it. For so much of their lives, many people, and historically women especially, have been tied to these domestic duties, always having to be home to cook, to clean, to take care of everyone else. But later in life, especially if you're living alone, can be, well, a total liberation from that. All of a sudden, you can stay out as late as you want. There's no one to answer to. Okay, so what about the classic solution? The aging parent moves in with their kids. But let's really think about what that means. You're leaving your home, your neighborhood, your friends, basically your entire support system. You move into their space with their rules, and you're no longer the head of the household. It can so easily become a situation where you feel like you're a burden, or as she puts it, a troublemaker. And that's exactly why Ueno calls that wonderful, well-intentioned invitation a sweet lie. It sounds so loving, so perfect on the surface, but it often just masks how incredibly difficult and potentially unhappy that situation can be for everyone. The parents lose their independence, and the children take on a huge responsibility they might not be ready for. And you know what? The data actually backs this up in a pretty shocking way. A survey on senior happiness found something incredible. The least happy group wasn't the people who lived alone. Nope. It was the elderly who moved in with their children later in life. Those who lived by themselves or just as a couple, they reported the highest satisfaction. That just completely flips the script on what we assume makes people happy as they get older. So this brings us to a real turning point, the absolute core of this new philosophy. We have to completely rethink what it means to live by yourself in your later years. It's not some sad outcome or a sign of failure. It's a huge opportunity. And this is what solo aging is all about. It is not about loneliness. It is about freedom. It's about you actively choosing how you want to live your life. If you feel like being by yourself, great. You have solitude. If you want some company, you go and find it. You are in the driver's seat of your own social life, and that is an incredibly powerful place to be. And this really shows you the critical difference in mindset. So on one hand, you've got the person whose entire social world is their family. When that family isn't physically there anymore, they can become completely isolated because they never practice the skill of building other friendships. But the solo living expert, they're different. They've cultivated a whole network of diverse social connections. They're comfortable with being alone, and they're comfortable with being with others. They are, in a word, socially resilient. All right, so if the traditional family model isn't the only answer, then what is? Well, Ueno argues that the real foundation for a happy, fulfilling later life is built on something else entirely, our friends. I mean, just think about that for a second. It's such a powerful idea. Family connections can change, your kids have their own lives, and your work colleagues, they pretty much disappear after you retire. But your chosen friends, they are often the ones who are right there with you, providing support and companionship right to the very end. So here's the crucial thing to remember. This takes work. It's an active effort. Unlike family, you have to constantly nurture your friendships. And your work friends, well, those relationships are often tied to your job. And they don't always survive retirement. But friends are your chosen family. They're the people you invest your time and energy in for mutual support and shared joy. And that investment, let me tell you, It pays the biggest dividends in your later years. Okay, so we've busted the myth, we've laid a new foundation. What now? Well, now we get to the practical part. This is the blueprint for actually putting this entire philosophy into action. Here it is, the roadmap. Step 1, have your own space, where you call the shots. Step 2, actively build that circle of friends, people who have nothing to do with your job. 3, manage your money safely, no risky business. 4, and this is a big one, realize your assets, including your house, are for your well-being, not just to be left as an inheritance. 5, learn to accept help when you need it, without feeling any shame. And finally, step 6, prepare for the end, practically, so that your wishes are known and respected. Look, at the end of the day, this philosophy isn't anti-family. Not at all. It's pro-choice. It's pro-independence and pro-preparedness. It's about consciously designing the last chapter of your life instead of just passively letting it happen to you. So the real question, the one I want to leave you with, is this. How do you want to live your later life? And what are you doing today to start building it?